It's trying to raise that awareness with everybody, that space of awareness, that enlightenment is a requirement of everybody. Everybody has to be willing. Now, but you can only control yourself, but that's also how you can model it, whether you're the leader or the employer, is you can learn how to model enlightenment. So even if your boss is not the greatest communicator, that you actually can help facilitate great communication rather than getting frustrated and quitting or moving on.
There are opportunities for our work and careers everywhere, if you know where to look. That's easier said than done, especially in our fast-paced and constantly changing world. Ann Faremouth is talking to experts, employers, and job seekers to bring you insight and understanding about what's possible. This is Career Can Do, where we're navigating the new work world.
Welcome to the Career Can Do podcast, a top global podcast to help you navigate the new work world. My name is Ann Faremouth. I'll be the host for this episode. And today I am just delighted to have a guest on my show that I have the highest regard and respect for. Michael Sherlock is the CEO and president of Shock Your Potential. I wanted to have her on the show today because Michael has a unique skill set, a unique kind of a bailiwick in her bag of good tools that combines both being an entrepreneur as well as having the corporate experience. Before launching her global training company, Shock Your Potential, Michael was vice president of U.S. sales for two multinational medical device companies, responsible for net revenue exceeding $75 million. And at Shock Your Potential, Michael helps businesses to create the dream teams of tomorrow by developing exceptional leaders today. So, without further ado, and after that incredibly long introduction, help me welcome Michael Sherlock. Michael, say hello to everybody.
Thank you. Hello. And I have to say, Ann, what's funny is you just said the word bailiwick, and someone in an email today put that in there. It's a speaking engagement I'm doing in September. His line was like, so I don't know where you are in your bailiwick today. And I'm like, wow, I've heard that twice in one day. I don't think I've heard it in my entire life.
Well, there's always something to that. We got to pay attention to stuff like that. But I met Michael several years ago at a national convention, and I was so impressed with her. She does so many wonderful things. She's got some new programs coming up that I think are really going to be instrumental in helping people in the new work world. And as we talked about on many of these episodes, it truly is a new work world. So, Michael, I understand you have a new community called the Enlightened Workplace. What do you mean by enlightened? Not to be corny here, but shed some light on that.
Enlightened, I love it. I'll start with a little bit of a story, and that is the majority of what I do is speaking and training on leadership and sales. Everything that I do is focused on communication. And over the years, after every program that I do somewhere in this world, because I travel all over the globe, somebody will come up to me and say, do you do executive coaching? And I always say, I do, but not very often, meaning I only hold a couple spots for that because there's so much energy involved with one-on-one coaching of people. And I want to be able to only give all the best of myself. So when I realized that the demand and the questions about people's career, their career advancement, how to do more, especially like you said, in this changing work world, I said, it's time to build something where I can reach more people with the same kind of message. And at the core of everything I teach when it's communication, I talk about this moment of enlightenment. And that enlightenment is the moment where somebody, either as a leader, as a business owner, as an employee, as somebody searching for a job, as you work with in recruiting, somebody who's hiring somebody in recruiting, that moment where they go, oh, I get it now. I understand my responsibilities. I understand what I need to do for myself to help myself. That moment of enlightenment is kind of where the magic happens, in my view. My ultimate goal is to reach more people who say, if I'm going to really take charge of my career, I'm really going to take charge of how I lead people, I'm really going to take charge of how my business operates, then I'm going to be open to being enlightened. And that doesn't mean I'm going to see things that I always want. It means that I'm willing to see what's really there. Kind of like putting a spotlight on it and saying, how do I know what my next steps can be? And also, how can I take those steps with confidence of what I'm going to try to achieve? So
Um,
that's really what I mean by enlightenment.
and for what better person to get the information from someone who was chosen by enterpriseleague.com as one of the top 12 leaders or top female entrepreneurs to watch. All right.
Yeah.
So, congratulations. What an acknowledgement. The top 12 female entrepreneurs to watch. What a designation. And to get information from someone with that kind of a reputation, I think that even goes further. When you talk about these communities that you're thinking about, what do you mean by the team community? What can people learn or expect from it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of concepts around communities now, like a Facebook community and a following, all these different elements that talk about community. But when I talk about community, I mean about creating a type of learning environment that's completely different. So we incorporate live training sessions, we have frequent Q&A. We're taking the concepts that I'm talking about. So for instance, one of the core concepts that is most popular in our community to discuss is the concept of, does self-doubt get in my way? And self-doubt, for instance, absolutely gets in your way of your career. We talk about not only why that's getting in your way, but really implementable strategies and say, here's how you start to move past self-doubt. You don't just look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm a good person. I feel great about myself. Dealing with something like self-doubt or procrastination, or how do I ask for a raise? Do I deserve a raise? How do I deal with communication issues in the workplace? We're tackling those in live sessions together. And then we're taking that into what we call our virtual water cooler. On the virtual water cooler, it is a digital platform where we are engaging and I can provide e-coaching to hundreds of people rather than a couple people at a time. So that's the core of this community, is this live engagement that happens weekly. And it wraps together with the virtual water cooler. Plus, then, depending on the level of somebody in the community, they can also have more direct access to me. We have different kinds of quarterly training programs. We have a book of the month club that we're launching this fall. Different elements that are all designed to help people ask themselves the tough questions about how they are actually moving through their careers and being open to change as the dynamics continue to change in the workplace.
That's pretty powerful. And I'm really impressed because you have such a thriving speaking career. For you to branch out into something like this, it's just like the icing on the cake. But these communities are these things that people can join and that they can see on Zoom, or that they get together with these communities once a week, or how did this all work and how do they find out about it?
Yeah, perfect question. Well, if you go to our website, shockyourpotential.com, everything is there that will lead you through it. But yes, it's a membership community and it's very, very affordable. And when I say very affordable, it's ridiculously affordable. I should be charging way more. But part of that membership is to get access to the weekly training. So they're not open to the public, they're only open to our members. Once you become a part of our community, then you get access to all the benefits of the level. And when I'm talking ridiculously affordable, I'm saying like the entry level or silver level membership is $25 a month, 25, 25. It's just
Wow.
ridiculous. But because I want to reach more people. And, you were talking about my speaking career, which I love. There's two things I've learned. Number one is, before the pandemic hit, my entire company was built on my speaking career. And when the pandemic hit and meetings stopped happening and businesses stopped training, all of a sudden my income went from a really nice income to zero really fast. And in that, we grew and adapted as a company to offer different services and things that really got us through that. Now that my speaking career is back 100%, now I'm asking myself questions about, what if I decide to take 6 months off? What if I want to work from the road wherever? How do I still do what I love to do and what's in my zone of genius, which is really coaching people through their careers? And how can I do that anywhere? And so that was the evolution that we've actually been testing this community for about a year. And after we have found kind of our niche in this, it's time to really open it up globally. So as we go through the next few months, we are going to expand into multiple other countries. We're already in 4 countries, but our goal is to reach every country and find people who say, I want to figure out how to make my career work for me. So like your topic, your title of career can do, it's the same thing. It's really about what you can do for your career. If you're willing to have the enlightenment to look at yourself and say, I'm going to continue to take steps that will help me do what I need to do to get to the next level.
That's great. And the other thing I'm thinking about, when people are going through thought processes of change, how great for them to be in a community of other people who are going through the same thing. So you don't feel alone. You don't feel like you're the lone ranger here. And you have somebody that's at the helm here, like Michael, that's really going to walk you through this and help you feel supported, as well as be with other people. And I'm sure, too, when they're in these communities, they're hearing what other people are thinking. I think the same thing.
Absolutely. And that's the fun of this virtual water cooler, especially where so many people today are working hybrid or remote, fully remote or a hybrid. They're missing that dynamic. They're missing that opportunity to sit and have a cup of coffee or to get a glass of water near the water cooler and say, how are you doing today? Hey, I'm faced with this challenge. Have you ever done this? So we're creating that environment just with people who are of the like mindset to be able to be working on themselves. I was just meeting with my team day before yesterday on this, and I said, when we talk about who we want in this community, let's be really clear. We're not looking for the person who wants 10 tips to just be great or the top 10 tips on how to ask for a raise. But the way we share information is I might give you the top 10 tips on how to ask for a raise, but I don't want people in the community that are coming there for a quick fix. I want people who say, okay, if you're going to tell me that, I'm going to work through those steps. I'm going to deal with the discomfort. I'm going to deal with that anxiety that comes from change or doing things differently. And I'm willing to put in the effort, not just sit there and listen. So if anybody's listening right now and they're like, oh, this would be great, it'll help me get a promotion, only if you're ready to come and be enlightened. You don't have to be fully enlightened before you get there, but you better be willing to open yourself to enlightenment. Because if you are, then you're going to find yourself surrounded by people who will support that journey with you.
Well, I think in these times, that is something people are certainly going to need. The other thing I'm thinking about here, the wheels are turning in my head about this, is that we have an unprecedented talent shortage right now. We don't have enough people. And we have a lot of post-COVID, a lot of people wanting to hire. I'm thinking communities like this, or what you're talking about, this enlightenment, can also help people, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, to understand how to communicate transferable skills, right? We're not going to have every single box checked. But let me tell you what I do have. Let me tell you what I can bring. And working in a community, joining a community like this, you're going to have the emotional and actually the physical support of a leader here that certainly got years of experience, but might help you go into that interview and present yourself in an honest and true way, but to be able to be considered. Whereas before, you didn't know how to do it. So I think this is invaluable. As a recruiter sitting on this side of the desk, I'm sitting here jumping up and down trying to be calming on the podcast. But I think this is really necessary and will help so many people. I know you've written a book too. 2 of them. Tell us, I know the one, but when did the other one come out?
Gosh, so the first one is called Tell Me More: How to Ask the Right Questions and Get the Most Out of Your Employees, which sounds like it's only really a leadership book, but it's not. It's actually good for everybody. The second one is called Sales Mixology: Why the Most Potent Sales and Customer Experiences Follow a Recipe for Success. I think that was out in 2019, if I remember correctly. And my third one will be The Enlightened Workplace, and that's going to come out at the end of this year. And what's fun with the third one, as I'm writing The Enlightened Workplace, is I'm covering every aspect of the hiring and onboarding process from both the leader's perspective and the employee's perspective. So everything from, like you said, how do you show up to an interview? How do you even decide which interviews are right for you? Versus also, how as a leader do you prepare to give a good interview? What are you trying to accomplish? So we walk through it all. And anybody who follows me on LinkedIn, you'll notice that I do weekly this posting that's called Dear Bad Boss. So I'll have a Dear Bad Boss post, and then I'll follow it in the whole post with Dear Bad Employee, where you're talking about the same topic from two people's perspectives. And I always ask, who's right? Who's wrong? and what's the gap? And I'm trying to get people to see that you could have a dear bad boss. Why are you giving me this project so late and then always checking up on me? And why don't you trust me? And the dear bad employee might say, dear bad employee, why don't you deliver on timelines? Why do I have to chase you down to get updates? I need to know where you are or how I can help. So it's trying to raise that awareness with everybody, that space of awareness, that enlightenment is a requirement of everybody. Everybody has to be willing. Now, but you can only control yourself, but that's also how you can model it, whether you're the leader or the employer, is you can learn how to model enlightenment. So even if your boss is not the greatest communicator, that you actually can help facilitate great communication rather than getting frustrated and quitting or moving on. So as I'm working through this book, and it's all aligned with what we're going to do and what we are doing in the Enlightened Workplace community, it's about that level of responsibility to say, I can control myself and I can do it for the right reasons, for the good of myself and for the good of the company.
Well, that's wonderful. This is so necessary. So many people are going to benefit from this because, I just did an applicant today interview and he was a great candidate, but he didn't present himself strongly enough to overcome any objections. And maybe had he had a session in a couple of communities that you're talking about, he would have been able to overcome those objections. I think this is great. I think you're offering something that is really going to help a lot of people. I think the world of you. You've got the utmost respect from your speaking career, but this is just going one step further now, opening up in a more global way to help more people become successful. We're coming near the end here. They can get a hold of you on LinkedIn or on your website. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah. And I'd say it's always easiest just to go to our website, shockyourpotential.com. It's just like it sounds, the word shock, the word your, Y-O-U-R, potential.com. There you'll find all our links to all of our social media. So you can find my LinkedIn link there as well. But I think that's the greatest place to start because also you'll be able to access kind of the free introductory session for the Enlightened Workplace and get a feel for what this community is. You can also find links to my books and everything else that you need to, you can do there. And that's really a great starting point to also see whether or not I might be a good fit for you. And just like I know you believe in this firmly, is that placing someone in a job is not just about getting them a job or getting that employer a candidate. It's about making the right match. Even with something like a community or looking at me as a speaker, it's got to be the right match. You'll see a lot of my video clips. You'll see interviews with me on news media where I'm always talking about jobs issues in national media, is that opportunity to say, this feels right. I think this person might get me. And that may help somebody to say, maybe I'll give this a try.
Okay, great. Well, I always like to leave listeners with two salient points they can take with them from the podcast. So if I asked you, what are two really salient, strong points, Michael, you can leave our listeners with, what would they be?
Well, the first one is what I call reflection. I always say, pretend your hand is a mirror that you're carrying around with you. And throughout the day, when you reach points in your career, your job, your frustration with your colleague or your boss, instead of thinking about how you're feeling about them, reflect back on yourself. How am I approaching this? How am I responding to this? How am I reacting to this? Because that reflection is the first step in enlightenment. And the second point then to follow that up is when you see that, good, bad, or ugly, doesn't matter. You might say, hey, I'm actually doing really well here. But whatever you see, ask yourself this, based on what I see now, what next step can I do to make this situation better, to reduce the tension, to give a new solution, to find a way back together? And when we really take our careers from that standpoint of only knowing what we can individually control, all of a sudden our ability to handle our career in a different way is elevated. And when we find that elevation, we are really making steps towards enlightenment.
All right. Well, I think that's a powerful bunch of information you shared with our listeners. I'm one of your biggest cheerleaders. I think the world of you, Michael. I met her many years ago at a conference in Baltimore, and we've stayed in touch ever since. All this information will also be on my website, faremouth.com. We're almost at the end here, and I want to thank Michael Sherlock again with Shock Your Potential for being on Career Can Do. We'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
We thank you for tuning in to our Career Can Do podcast. We make no guarantees on results for your particular quest, but we hope you enjoy the information presented. The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely that of the guest or speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Mary Ann Faremouth and Faremouth and Company. Thank you.